So another year has passed, and as tradition for every year, because this is apparently the only thing I know how to do every year, except for whenever it comes to 2016. That was a real drought of a year, wasn't it? We once again revisit in remembrance of the previous 12 months by making a top 10 list. Top 20 list. Wait a minute, that's 10 more games than last year. Which means 2023 was a good year for gaming. No exaggerating, no bullshit. This is the pantheon of the best years of gaming. 2007, 2017, 1994, 1998, child's play compared to our Lord and Savior, that is 2023. Okay, I might be overhyping this year, but for real, this might be one of the best years I could definitively say I enjoyed. Considering how this is the year I actually managed to play every game released this year? Jesus, what a time for me to build my brand new PC. A time where there's a lot of buggy PC ports. Admittedly, the console gaming division is the one that's carrying this generation, which is why I still hold dear to my PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Oh, and Nintendo. Let's not forget that they have games too. I've made it a journey for myself to definitively make this year the year for my content creation, and let's just say, this is definitely the most production I've ever done besides dying after summer. Look, I at least made double the effort compared to 2022's drought, so I'd say that's an improvement. Of course, getting the usual rule sites out of the way, no remasters or ports unless it's a game that's released in the States for the first time. Which is funny considering I could have put Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon on 2021's list. But don't worry, Fire Emblem Engage will get its time to shine on my list. There was a lot to consider when making the best list of this year. There was just way too many games that I feel like 20 games is not enough to justify the amazingness of this year, let alone 10 entries. That would be impossible. But I believe that I created what I find to be my personal 20, and I hope that you guys also share the same viewpoint, or at the very least can get some recommendations out of the games that I'm going to cover. I did set a poll stating the possibility of making a top 50 for this year, and I wasn't kidding. I could have included 50 games if I wanted to waste my Sunday afternoons. Plural. In fact, 3 games I didn't consider but still recommend your time and attention: Metroid Prime Remastered, Dokapon Kingdom Connected, and GoldenEye. These are either remasters or ports of older games that I still absolutely recommend, but it's kind of hard to classify them as 2023 since they're not full-blown remakes. And I have to reiterate this once again, I'm gonna be very biased. This is my own personal opinion, so if you're gonna complain that I'm putting Just Dance over Armored Core, then that's perfectly valid. Wait, what the f***? Holy shit. How do they do it? Making one Just Dance game tolerable is one thing, but a second one from the following sequel? Wait, hold up, why is there Pizza Tower footage? Oh, thank God I can't count. Never have I seen such a grotesque and ugly looking game with visual garbage that makes you dry heave mucus, and yet fits exactly well to the style of the game. Let's not kid ourselves here. This game looks bad, but that's the intended point. And it's not bad as in it's unplayable by any means. It's bad because that's the joke. That's the style that Tour de Pizza went for and went all out with the visual flair, and it ultimately looks good. Granted, I wouldn't call Pizza Tower the room of video games because it's purposefully bad, but it contrasts the movie by having fantastic gameplay too. The platforming is so hectic, it's so fast, and you're given so many options even though these are the basic controls of 2D platformers. The exploration of each and every level at the beginning fits so serene and feels exciting, but then you reach to the end of the level and you gotta haul ass up, and good luck if you want to reach the maximum overpass that is P rank, if you think you have the balls to achieve it. If I have to give one legitimate criticism, I wish the boss fights were more enticing. The majority of them I still have fun, but the chaotic nature of the battles are undermined of how relatively easy they are. In fact, these are the only stages I can legitimately reach P rank for the game. Still, this game does reward lots of replay value, and it's certainly a game I can imagine speedrunners and hardcore platformers enjoying the heck out of. Now, at first glance, this game does look like a remaster version or a port of GranBlue Fantasy Versus back in 2020, but make no mistake, this is, in fact, a sequel with brand new mechanics, new characters with every veteran returning, a brand new story, and more importantly, the revamped online infrastructure that in fact includes crossplay and rollback netcode. This game is just as I remembered it, but with every character getting new attacks and options for pressure and precision, such as 3 new dash attacks, brave counters, and a revamped special attack mechanic that helps newer players without those pesky motion controls, but satisfies older players like me who know how to pull off a quarter circle forward motion by balancing them with the damage input and timing. With easy to pull off combos and a vast array of archetypes, sometimes multiple archetypes of characters, or if you just want to fuck with people and play Charade from Soul Calibur 2, honestly what made the first GranBlue Fantasy Versus good just needed to be amplified for the sequel, and Cygames has nailed it down perfectly. And again, this game has rollback netcode. That alone is worthy of replayability if you enjoyed the first game. Also, once again, Zoe is bae because sin and white hair is ill. I will hammer that trait in until you realize the beauty of its simplicity. I mean, there's no way you could perfect waifu bias for me unless... Thanks to the inclusion of 2B being a playable character, I've decided to bump GranBlue Fantasy Versus Rising 2 slots above the list. But wait, base, you might add, how come Guilty Gear Strive didn't raise its ranking slot when there were more characters introduced? The game was already number 1, how much higher can it go? If anything, including Happy Chaos onto the roster makes me put it down a peg. If you look at my 2018's best list, you'd know that Octopath Traveler 1 was my all-time best game of that year. At least until Smash Ultimate got more DLC and suddenly I dated myself by saying that. But that doesn't change the fact that Octopath Traveler 2 is a worthy successor to the newly developed series, and the only Square Enix published title even in contention of the best year's list.
How is it final if there's 16 of these?
Look, it's no secret that Square Enix has been a consistently divisive company, but I'll give credit when credit is due. They still know how to make an engaging turn-based RPG. You don't even need to worry about continuity. You can jump into Octopath 2 since they uncover 8 brand new stories from 8 brand new characters, and while it would be cool to see more interactivity besides dual pairs and occasional battle quotes of encouragement, all 8 characters stand out on their own way in terms of what they encounter and how they deal with their dilemma. And let's be frank here, this is the closest we're gonna get to a good Pokemon game this year. Every character plays differently enough to make them stand out while still keeping the core gameplay intact. And you can tackle the game any way you want, focusing on one character only, recruiting various of different party members, or uncover everyone's story, which will no doubt take over 60 hours of completion time. This game is most certainly long, but it's the journey that will lead you to salvation, whether it's becoming a dancing diva, assassinating your parents, avenging the death of your wife, or capitalism. The best way to kill a JRPG final boss, McDonald's. This game will keep you busy for a long time, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I spent plenty of hours on this game, and I've only finished 2 stories so far. So it's definitely a commitment if you want to beat this game. I apologize for the lack of character model in the title screen, but what the hell am I gonna do for this entry? Draw a Mercedes-Benz? Okay, so I'm kind of cheating here with this next entry since I have 3 different games. But they're all from the same genre, they play similar enough, and while yes, there are minor differences to make them differentiate in quality for each game, I love all my children equally. But if I only had to pick one, it's Forza Motorsports. This was the game that got me into the genre. Well, technically it was Gran Turismo 3, but Forza was the one that convinced me to get an official steering wheel peripheral. Don't ask me how I'm using a PlayStation wheel on an Xbox, I have my methods. The game was accessible enough for me to casually play through, but playing through it and replaying it over and over again made me more comfortable with the more advanced mechanics. Then I played the Crew Motorsport and thought the open world exploration was brilliant with its charming characters and rivals. The same with LEGO 2K Drive with its open world exploration and brilliant and charming characters and rivals. These two are the same game under a different skin. I mean, I have to be impressed a little bit considering they made a good crew game, so at least there is something to salvage from the series. But if I had to pick one of the three, again, Forza Motorsport manages to keep me replaying the game. The track selection, which are based off of real-life locations, and the driving is so customizable. It quickly makes me more comfortable with playing driving games, and eventually experiment with the Crew and 2K Drive. I do personally think that LEGO 2K Drive and the Crew Motorsports are better games in comparison to Forza Motorsports, but Forza deserves a spot here just for getting me into the genre in the first place. So that's why I have all three entries bundled into the number 17 spot. Never would have I ever thought that we'd get a sequel or successor to Samba de Amigo. This series is so niche, so underrated, but this Mexican, Brazilian, Latino monkey rises from the grave and grants us a banger of a video game. This game fits perfectly for the Joy-Con controls. While not my go-to control style, it's still a fun casual game with a set list that honestly perplexes me more than makes me happy. Don't get me wrong, there are huge bangers and there are certainly a lot of Latin tracks and covers that will do the genre justice. And for the non-Latin tracks, they managed to implement them in a run rhythmic style of charting with creative arm movements and goofy as hell dance moves. But seriously, when I think of the Hispanic Heritage Month, why would I consider the Jonas Brothers? Plus, for all of you hardcore rhythm enthusiasts that are not into waggling your Wii Remote and Nunchuck, you can still play with the Pro Controller without all that doohickey, and it's still a proper rhythm game. It's simple to play, but hard as hell to master. Honestly, I'm just glad that we got another Samba de Amigo. Sega has been slowly reviving its old IPs through its years, Sakura Wars, Valkyria Chronicles. All it's missing is Jet Set Radio and Crazy Taxi. And this is the building to thank it all! If it still existed. Special mentions to the iPhone port as well. On top of including some exclusive tracks, the touchscreen controls also works perfectly for this style of gameplay as well. Yeah, I think I bashed on Ishin a little too hard during my review, so allow me to make it up for it by the fact that this is easily the best side game for a Yakuza title to date! I don't know if this is even accurate to call it a side game since it's very integral to the story, and might as well be an unofficial sequel to Yakuza 6. Sure, Yakuza Like a Dragon is phenomenal in its own right, but with the change in gameplay and protagonists, some fans may call it a departure from the series. With Gaiden, not only does it occur at the same time as Yakuza 7, but this game is a proper send-off to Kiryu's story that will probably be negated by the time Infinite Wealth releases. But until that day comes, holy shit was this a ride of turbulence. The drama, the character interactions, frickin' Akane is a goddamn treasure. The pocket racing, holy crap, they brought pocket racing back! The only downside I can think of is that the game is a little too short for a Yakuza title, which makes sense considering how this isn't even a fully priced retail game. But even for the short lengths, Chapter 2 in particular seems to take off half of its runtime for some reason. It's a little padding to show off its side content and explores probably too much of the Akane network, but they're still entertaining as always, and that ending. Oh my god, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but my god, I haven't cried in a video game since playing through Snake Eater. It hits you damn hard, and it's worthy of your playtime as a Yakuza fan. Okay, so this game is going to be very difficult to explain without spoiling the plot or the theming of this game, but without giving away too much detail, Slay the Princess is a visual novel game where your goal is to slay the princess. But it's not as easy as it sounds. If I had to describe this game as a family tree, imagine if the Stanley Parable made sweet, sweet love to Doki Doki Literature Club.
Aw, that's sweet, but it probably needs more Willem Dafoe.
This game gives out the same amount of comedy, however also gives out a horror-like element of uncertainty or creepiness. Whether or not you're supposed to do as the title says, or if there's some deeper meaning behind what's happening when you accomplish your goal, this game can go into some weird directions, and the interactions that, whether or not you accomplish said task, or even if you're supposed to do that in the first place. The game can trick you into thinking you may have slain the princess, when in actuality, you've only saved her. Unless you're talking about slaying her pussy if you go that route, am I right, boys? There are over 90 different endings, some requiring unlocking other endings to even get to said endings. This game is worth exploring, and it's only $20 on Steam. The game may look simplistic, but it's worth checking out if you have the time. If you told me before I would consider playing Baldur's Gate 3, I'd tell you straight up, isn't that the bear f***ing game? Why the hell would I want to play that? What I wasn't told until a friend of mine called it, is that this game is an expansive D&D campaign that's more than just a bear f***ing simulator. From the party members that join you during your adventures, or freeform and creative turn-based combat that your imagination can conjure up with its environment and level design, this game has the freeform ability to do whatever you want in the story and the gameplay. I didn't beat this game. Yeah, this game is on the list out of principle. The game is way too big for my liking, but that doesn't mean the time I spent wasn't boring by any means. And especially when playing with friends and you get this full-blown D&D campaign from a video game form. Honestly, this is the type of game I've been waiting to exist since I love the concept of D&D and would love to experience it if I had the time. This is going off topic, but working a 9 to 5 as an adult definitely makes me wish that this game existed when I was a kid. And the hardware that I could play it on, because I never grew up with Baldur's Gate 1 or 2. What do you take me for, a nerd? I was too busy pounding Tony Hawk and Joanna Dark. I'd imagine this is the type of game where if I take the time and commitment to fully play through the game, this could easily make it to my number 1 slot. But as it stands, number 13 ain't so bad, right?
And from here on, I would consider the rest of these games 10 out of 10 material. I pissed off some Baldur's Gate fans for saying that, didn't I? The next 12 games, I would honestly consider them to be number 1 if it was any other year. This year was just that stacked. I seriously cannot reiterate how much 2023 is an amazing year. That's why I can't even make a top 10, because 12 of these games are just that good, and if any of them get the number 1 spot, they absolutely deserve it. But this is my list, so I'm gonna have to rank them in order. So, starting with the number 12 spot, we've got...
Oh, did I say Octopath Traveler is the only Square Enix title on the best list? Yeah, I lied. Cause Super Mario RPG is an amazing experience! An absolutely faithful remake while adding additional cute cutscenes and quality of life improvements. It is admittedly on the easy side and there is no difficulty selection, so veteran JRPG fans, the story might be the only reason you want to play this game since, well, if you played Paper Mario, it's quite literally a beta test of that engine. Not to say that's a bad thing, because the game does poke fun at those tropes with the dialogue. Whether it's your party members, the narrator, the NPCs around you, or the bad guys, this game is absolutely hilarious. I chuckle every time Mallow or Bowser comes on screen. These two are the absolute MVPs in terms of comic relief. And honestly, that's why this game is so great. It is the perfect RPG game for beginners getting into the genre, and the story is just breathtaking. And the music, oh my god, the music remade with HD orchestral soundtrack. I could listen to the sad song for hours on end while rethinking my life choices. This game barely managed to hit my 10 out of 10 nostalgia bones, and I admit that might be my bias talking, since I imagine those who have never played Mario RPG may or may not have a similar experience to me when I was a kid. And by that I mean when it was on the Nintendo Wii Shop channel, because I may be old, but I'm not that old. Give this game a chance, cause I guarantee you, if you're in the mindset, this game will make you happy. Alright, let me get this disclaimer out of the way despite not mattering anyways, because I gave money to Warner Brothers and not the real life equivalent of Voldemort. Ahem. Fuck J.K. Rowling, she's an idiotic transphobic bitch that spits in the name of feminism. Are we good? No, because I still spend money on Hogwarts Legacy? Well, fuck you, because Hogwarts Legacy is awesome! That feeling of being in the Hogwarts universe, attending classes, learning magic spells, Pokemon? Freaking Pokemon? Avalanche Software somehow managed to create the best Pokemon game this year. They crammed this game with so much worthwhile and entertaining content, from the drama and wholesome moments of your classmates, that feeling of glee and whimsical when you discover something wholesome, the Devil May Cry-like combat where you could combo spells and attacks, the story, taking down the evil and downright racist hobgoblin, all for the better of your community. It's legitimately crazy to think that such wholesome and majestic energy exuberating from this game can be considered transphobic, especially when we have a legit trans badass in the game. It shows how little J.K. Rowling's influences comes into the game, because if she has any say in the game's moral, it's clear that her message contradicts with the game's theme of acceptance. Please, if you're willing to open your mind, give this game a shot. And if you're really that paranoid, just pirate the game or buy it used. Ah yes, the best JRPG release this year. Don't know where Quebec is, but I'm sure they're just as popular in Japan. You know, it's funny how this game and Super Mario RPG came out the same year, because Sea of Stars just happens to be somewhat of a spiritual successor. The time-hit mechanics of the turn-based combat combines with the oh-so-lovable characters and party members that your 3 adventurers, plus potentially more, go through this gigantic journey. This game gives off that wacky and comedic Super Mario RPG feel, since the character interactions, the journey, and the overall feel of just oozes of mystical whimsy that reminds me why I enjoyed playing RPGs as a kid. And the combat is no slouch either. It's timing based to get MP for special attacks, and borrowing from Mario and Luigi's mechanics of team-based attacks and special moves, all are animated with classic sprite-based graphics that looks gorgeous. This game is a magical breath of fresh air, and one of the few IPs that manages to tickle my nostalgia bones. Expect a lot of that from some upcoming games.
Close your eyes. Come to me. Feel
This is me owning up to the mistake of not including Elden Ring. Sure, it's not the same developers, but it still has the same feel and arguably more immersive setting. The desolated French architecture and gloomy atmosphere. I say French, but there's a lot of characters with British accents, one with an Italian accent, and there's this chick with an Asian accent for some reason. As you progress through the game and expand your hotel with its denizens from the plague that is COVID, I mean the Black Plague, honestly I don't remember what it's actually called, just calling it COVID seems a lot more easier. The game itself still gives that Dark Souls difficulty, but with a more linear layout, since each area you explore more or less traverses you into a straight pathway. That's not a bad idea by any means, though it does, ironically, make the game easier, but because of that, I was able to get into the genre of Dark Souls-like game a lot easier.
Wait, did I just call myself a noob?
I mean, just because it's easy to get into doesn't make the game any less hard. The boss battles will definitely kill you over and over and over, regardless of whether or not you get backup or not. Not every henchman is easy to kill, as some can flank you faster than a horror jump scare. The mini-bosses are no slouch either, some are even harder than the actual boss fights. All the while, save points are scarce, resources are limited, but this game makes you want to get good. The challenge is brutal, but it's the kind of brutal that is satisfying when you overcome the battle. I'm sure any Dark Souls-like fans already enjoy the crap out of Liza P, but if you have an inkling and interest of challenge, this is definitely a good starting point. I imagine it's hard enough to try to perfect perfection. Resident Evil 4 originally is a timeless classic, so trying to remake something like that in a new RE engine is a bold step. They did do it with the previous 2 Resident Evil games, with 2 being a standout experience, being able to hold on its own as an individual game, while still respecting and enhancing the spirit of the original. Resident Evil 3 is just kind of a rehash with less content. Yeah, it's hard to get excited when your previous remake didn't exactly hit the mark, and I wouldn't necessarily call Resident Evil 4 a replacement for the original, but much like Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4 Remake is, well, a remake. Sure, they didn't change much aside from the graphics, but it still manages to keep the core of what makes Resident Evil 4 so good, and still gives us a brand new experience. The mechanics still borrow from the third-person action that recent remakes go through, so admittedly, not much for innovation. Like the cheesy voice acting, they slightly make it a little bit more serious, but the jokes still land. And they even branch out Hanneken's and Luis's personalities from just being side characters in the original, with familiar territory that older Resident Evil fans would appreciate from its references to its gameplay mechanics. Make no mistake, as a Resident Evil fan, this will please you in so many ways, from its familiarity to its breath of fresh air. You know, I gotta be honest, despite being one of the best years for gaming, Sony didn't really attribute too much at all, except for this entry, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. This is an amazing follow-up to the first Spider-Man game and a great continuation to Miles Morales. It does take some commitment to play through the two games for what is debatably the third entry for the series, despite the number 2 in its title, but it's all worth it to see the interactions of Peter Parker, Miles Morales, and all the cast New Yorkers of the game. And look, I'm gonna be one of the defenders and say that the Mary Jane missions from the original were over-exaggeratedly hated. But thanks to those complaints, her missions are way more fun and all it requires is giving her a gun.
The Second Amendment must be proud!
The improvements made in terms of speed and exploration has been amplified in the sequel, giving us the ability to travel to the Queens sections of New York and catapulting from one island to another with full ease. And if you're too lazy and you want to fast travel, literally fast travel anywhere instantaneously with no loading times. This game absolutely shows the true power of the PlayStation 5 hardware. At least until a PC port releases. But until then, 1 year ahead of time, you can explore those Mysterium stages, the side missions of helping out Harry make the world a better place, and Venom. Oh my god, the glimpse that you get to play as Venom was hardcore as baller. You did a good job, Sony. Let's make sure that you keep up the score and hopefully not get hacked next time. I'm astounded by the amount of time I spent on this game. For a side game nonetheless, Tactica is surprisingly too good. I wouldn't necessarily say it's up to par with the original Persona 5's quality, let alone Royale's, but I certainly enjoy playing this game more than Persona 3.
I didn't say it was a bad game.
Would I get more hate if I said this was the best Fire Emblem game this year? It's a tactics game, so methodical thinking is required, especially during all those side missions, which forces you to get creative with the game's mechanics, like all-out attacks, technicals, and criticals. It is all translated well from the Persona game with tactics gameplay. The only thing I don't think translates one to another are character types and weaknesses, since none of the enemy characters have a specific weakness or resistance to them, but the way they translate elemental types is more creative since it functions as status ailments or positional changes, like how Garu pulls people away while psychokinesis grabs opponents closer, or how Agi, Bufu, and Zio provide status ailments correlating to that type. The game also allows everyone to have their own side persona to give to each character and an extra move, except for Arena. She's more special because she has more diverse movesets. So they managed to balance it out for every character, and on top of it off, the engaging gameplay loop. Now admittedly, the story doesn't really evolve our characters. That's because the entire game and the goal is to change the heart of one specific character. And my god, the way they creatively write for this guy Toshiro, talking about the themes of growing up in a strict environment, cancel culture, the effects of going too far, it's the perfect game to piss off Twitter.
Fuck you, it's called Twitter, I don't care.
It's also a game that out of every game I played this year, I managed to actually 100% from beginning to end, if I got that last achievement! Okay, so it's the closest I've ever gotten to completing the game, but the fact that I've come this close should be an indication of how engaged I was. More so compared to engaged.
Again, didn't say it was a bad game.
Alright, it's pretty clear what this game is just from the soundtrack and the gameplay graphically. You play Jet Set Radio? Bomb Rush Cyberpunk is pretty much the spiritual successor to that, and I fucking love it! Skating action with graffiti that's actually better than its predecessors, options for bikes and skateboards as well. We're getting Tony Hawk Pro Skater up in this! Colorful cast of characters and a super engaging story. The future is looking funky and funky. And if there's any way this game is the reason for Sega to finally make a new Jet Set Radio, I'm all for it. It's clear that the inspirations of Jet Set Radio is in place, and admittedly, some of its flaws are also present, like the combat and unlockables that honestly don't do a lot to hit you as to what is even there, or even the lack of a DJ Professor K equivalent. That in particular, I feel like is an absolute missed opportunity considering the amount of banger songs in this game. But the engine that they use for its freeform parkour, the idea of exploring the world, building up score, unlocking those characters when you finally prove your worth to the GGs, or, well, I mean, the game that you're actually called, and the world that the developers created in this dystopian world, all the while the music carries the journey. The level design, absolutely top-notch with plenty of opportunities to rack up style and flair. Now I admit, objectively, this game may be overinflated in terms of ranking. I do have more flaws with this game than the likes of Persona 5 Tactica or Spider-Man 2, so can I absolutely without certainty call Bomb Rush Cyberpunk a game that deserves the number 5 spot? Not exactly, but it does deserve it on my list. I'm biased. I've been waiting for this game since Jet Set Radio Future came out, and after nearly 20 years, I finally got one. And by God did it deliver. This is, no exaggeration, the best fighting game of all time when it came out. Yeah, the costume prices recently did pull this game back a peg or two, which is honestly impressive considering how I still put it pretty high on this list. In a 2023 list nonetheless. The foundation of the fighting game mechanics is basic, but brilliant. On top of getting every hit crunchier and meatier, this game manages to expand the veteran characters while retaining their personalities, fight styles, and introduce new characters that are given the same love, even if one or two of them straight up just replace certain veterans. The story mode is also, believe it or not trash. Fighting game story tends to get a bad rep for being bad at storytelling, but the game manages to revolutionize fighting game story by one, actually being good, but two, having the player interact with the world of Street Fighter. Instead of a chapter-by-chapter basis of random fights, this game gives a more RPG style of fighting game where you yourself learn new styles from other fighters and implement them into your own playstyle. Finally, I can create a character that can do a Shoryuken and a pile driver, and that character can be used on online avatar battles to fight each other's characters. On top of online battles, crossplay, and rollback netcode. I cannot state enough how much the standard industry mechanic is a must for every fighting game and improves fighting games significantly. If you were to judge the amount of time I spent on Street Fighter 6, you know that this is another fighting game I'm looking forward to playing in the future, especially with new characters via DLC. I can't wait to once again hit the streets. Also, because of my fiasco with GranBlue on this very video, expect Street Fighter 6 to be number 1 when Elena comes back. Breath of the Wild, no pun intended, was a breath of fresh air for the series, being a huge departure from the traditional dungeon loop and evolving the series into a brand new web. Of course, the sequel had to live up to the hype as well, and, well, most certainly did. The game essentially doubled, nearly tripled in map space by the addition of the Sky Worlds and the Underworld. There is so much to do, and I mean so much to do. Each crevice, location, town, and random rock has a purpose. This game is also freeform with its main story as well, much like Breath of the Wild, being able to go through any order of each 4 nations and rewarding the player with a new gameplay mechanic like getting a JoJo, and the fuse mechanics that creatively gives you more creativity, like building literally anything, a skateboard, airplanes, rap, f***ing kaiju, and this monstrosity. Jesus Christ, Base, censor that. You can get Mad Max up in this shit, and that alone, with all the freedom of parts that you can gather and create, absolutely warrants a spot in this list. That said, this is a damn good Zelda game that is arguably better than Breath of the Wild, though it does require playing the game to understand most of its mechanics. I still had a lot of fun with this entry, but I'm also kind of scared as to what's to come for future games. I am optimistic of whatever Nintendo offers, and Tears of the Kingdom still has plenty to do even after beating the game. That being said, this is Nintendo we're talking about, as much of an amazing game Tears of the Kingdom is. This is not even the best Nintendo game this year. I don't think I've binged played through an entire series through a short amount of time span, but this was the year I finally popped my Pikmin virginity. Before the build up to Pikmin 4, I binge played through the first trilogy of Pikmin games, even before the Switch ports got announced. I played the OG GameCube games and the deluxe port of Pikmin 3, and I enjoyed the hell out of every moment, except for when Louie's on the screen because fuck him. So to play what is arguably my most anticipated game after just playing through the first game, Pikmin 4 is not only arguably the best in the series, it is one of Nintendo's pinnacle franchises thanks to it. And you know, I'm proud of Pikmin's success recently because this game fully deserves it, with such a charming world, environment, and graphics that still perplex me on how they can output such realistic scenery. This game was practically made for Pikmin fans with the amount of references, continuations, and expansions in terms of gameplay, a fun new multiplayer playthrough, and a full-blown reimagining of the first game's plot as challenge maps, expansive collectibles, nighttime segments for the first time. This game manages to innovate in so many ways. It is easily the best Pikmin game in the series, and the wait was absolutely worth it. Yeah, at least for you guys. I literally just got into the series this year.
And now we get to my number one spot, the game that is the best of the best for 2023. A game not only do I deem to be Game of the Year, but potentially Game of the Decade, Game of the Century. And it's made by Bethesda. That's right, you know who it is. He starts with an S. Wait, what the f***? No, he doesn't.
Yeah, if you follow my channel, number one is kind of obvious. And how could it not be? Hi-Fi Rush is a brand new experience, blending two different genres into a unique and innovative video game. And there was no build-up, it was shadow dropped the day it released. Microsoft has something special on their hands, and this is the start of Xbox finally competing with the big three, before Starfield ruined its flow.
We'll get to that in the next video.
But let's not talk about the negatives, and let's talk about how spectacular Hi-Fi Rush is. This game is a mix of rhythm game and character action game, and it flows beautifully well, with each hit and impact feeling being in sync with the rhythm of the background music. Even more so when you've timed those attacks, dodges, and parries. Every part of this game's background scenery, music motif, environmental animation that syncopates to every time measure and BPM, every boss fight that charms you with its personality of each enemy and music, whether it's the licensed track or the copyright-free tracks made for the game, all of which played in harmonious bliss that can cure Stevie Wonder's deafness.
Oh shit, he was blind.
And the characters with everything so crafted to actual perfection. The replayability that makes me joyous to boot up the game again and experience all of my favorite characters' adventures, from the highs to the very highs to the down lows and drama, the references and hilarious writing, the Saturday morning cartoon vibe, and the fact that every segment of this game flowing so vividly, smoothly, and sometimes deadly. Hi-Fi Rush easily gets my number one spot for best game of 2023.
And I'm going a little off topic here, but throughout my gaming adventures since 2017, my number one spot has been consistent of Japanese games. Persona 5, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, even games that look westernized or are still developed and published by Capcom like Resident Evil 2. While Hi-Fi Rush is still a Japanese company, it is published by a Western developer, so technically you could say that this is the first Western game of the year in my list since 2016. The Western market finally got a W for once. The last time that happened was a game that no longer exists. I don't know, I just find that a little bit humorous. Maybe next year is gonna be different, who knows. Man, this is just a ride full of heaven. There's just too many gosh darn good games this year. I think I want to revisit some other games that didn't make it onto the list. Like, I didn't even mention games like Espresso Tycoon or Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I mentioned Fire Emblem Engage and Armor Core 6 being fantastic games. Sure, I made fun of them a little bit due to their flaws, but they're still fantastic as hell games that still deserve your attention. I'm even baffled that Just Dance still had a fantastic year. Just fucking Dance, an annualized Ubisoft title where their second game in the row was good. I legitimately think it's good. Oh, and for the free-to-play MiHoYo Honkai Star Rail, which is an addictive nightmare, like the waifus, the husbandos, Alien Hominid. Oh my god, there was an Alien Hominid game? That shit was my childhood during the Newgrounds era. Fucking Bluey? Like, who the fuck thought this would be playable? There's movement option, there's whatever the fuck that game is. I think that's good. I don't know what the fuck that game is, but I don't know, but it plays well. And we got NBA 2K? Okay, I don't know about that, maybe. God of Rock, which was kind of disappointing a little bit. Mortal Kombat 1 with the botched PC port. Diablo 4, it's Diablo 4, it's an online game. It's just like you don't get the good shit until the end of the game, so the rest of the journey is kind of boring. Harvest Moon made another game, I guess. It's Harvest Moon without the Harvest Moon love. Pokemon got an expansion. It's still as buggy as ever. Golem. Okay, why are we listing bad games all of a sudden?